Welcome to Innovate for Impact, an informative mini-series brought to you by Tania Gomez Consulting. In this series, we embark on a journey to explore the remarkable innovations that are shaping the landscape of the NDIS for a more inclusive future. Join us as we uncover inspiring stories of visionary individuals, organisations and technologies that are revolutionising the way we approach disabilities.
Hi Yasser, and welcome to Innovate for Impact. Today we're here to talk all about Tender Love and Care and the amazing work that you're doing. To start with, can you walk me through your mission at Tender Love and Care and what you're trying to achieve in the world?
Wow, this is really comes from the purpose, all right? So our purpose is to change this world to a better place, to make sure that people from vulnerable backgrounds, disability and age people and other communities are welcomed into the greater community. And that the greater community is also aware of how to deal with people from vulnerable backgrounds, to welcome them in. So we feel that we can be the vessel that can link these two polarized areas and bring them together through some of the initiatives that we work through.
Amazing. What a great mission. And last week you released your a new part of your business. Can you talk me through what that is?
So I have to give you a little bit of a background story. So when we started Tender Love and Care, we did the normal work, all right? So providing care for people in home, community access, all these kind of things. And we started looking at the gaps in the disability sector to find what is missing, what is the one piece that people really need. And we found that employment, the way it was shaped, was not really servicing the greater community, in my personal opinion. People with disability working full-time jobs, getting paid $2.90 on an average $6.2 an hour. I didn't agree with that. So it's the one model that we don't do in Tender Love and Care is that model, where people work and get paid $6 or $2 an hour. So we decided to break through and create a bit of disruptive management in that space. And open employment was the goal. We started that a few years back with some small initiatives that worked really well. And then we started growing, and then that's when the initiative of the coffee shop came about. So we opened that coffee shop in partnership with the participants to actually get ownership into it. And now we're looking at a franchising model, so it grows across all Australia. But from a business perspective, if you want to empower people with disability, they need to own the product, own the delivery of the product, and run it as a successful business. So you don't rely on fundraising events, you don't rely on donations, but people can actually earn their own living like we all do. So that's where we now make our own coffee, and the guys will pack their coffee beans. We're now looking at distributing it across Australia, exporting it internationally, and then delivering that to our coffee shops. It's made of 3 different blends, so it's a unique flavor for TLC, and the beans come from Colombia and Peru.
Amazing. And that's the Frap and Cap.
The Frap and Cap is the coffee shop, and then we have the TLC Impact, which is the coffee making initiative.
And can other cafes buy those beans?
Absolutely. It's a running business, and the idea of it is that it generates revenue, so we can pay people open employment wages like you and I will get paid.
Amazing. And how did you end up where you are today? What's your personal story through the disability sector?
Wow. So where it started, so my background was more into corporate world. That's the original starting point. And then I had an experience on a train of a situation that changed and transformed my mindset completely, that I started to feel you can be a lot happier by helping people. And then I changed my career completely and joined disability. I started as a support worker happily and proudly, and supported people all the way through. And then I moved up through education, business management and all that kind of stuff. And the drive was really, I wanted a career pathway that can change people's lives. And how can you have impact on people's lives if you're not growing your education, your success? Because your success is what really helps me to create influence in the community to help more people.
Amazing. And you have many businesses as part of the TLC group. Can you walk us through what those are?
Absolutely. So the backbone of the whole entity is TLC Disability Services. That's actually the backbone. So healthcare is where everything else is branched out. We have the TLC cleaning services. We do domestic support for people with disability and aged people. We have TLC Travel, which is an initiative. We provide consultancy to governments to be accessible touristic destinations for people with disability. So we go in and look at the place and see how we can have ramps or wheelchair accessible places, or maybe proper coloring to support people with autism or things like that. Look at the sensory stuff in these countries. But we also allow accessible travel for people. So we support them to live independently. Like we can go on holidays, people with disabilities should be able to go on holidays to destinations that welcome them appropriately. So that's TLC Travel. Then we have May Foods, which is the importing of food. 70% of employees of this company are people with disability in open employment.
Amazing.
No government funding at all. And then we have the TLC Aged Care, and that's just a natural growth of what we were doing, starting from zero to end of life. That was always the goal from day one. So that's now happening. We provide care for people from zero to end of life. So those are the sort of the key initiatives, the small little initiatives behind it, like the Frap and Cap coffee shop, and the TLC Impact Foundation.
Yeah, wow, that's a lot. So there's a lot going on for you in any given day.
So look, the whole thing is we're trying to have an ecosystem where this entities that is run quite independently and has its own operating structures can leverage each other to open opportunities for people. So for example, if someone comes through our NDIS services, skills development, job seeking approach, what happens after they learn the skill? That's always been a question. And instead of us going hunting around for employment, if the person ticks all the boxes, we can then offer them an opportunity because we are making and creating the opportunities.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean we don't collaborate with external parties. We do, and we do happily. But at the same time, we know that the person might struggle to find employment, and we're trying to set and pave the way for everyone to follow. So we show how we interview people, what equipment do we use, what tools do we give people to actually succeed in the employment that we offer them.
And so what percentage of your revenue or income would come from government funding, and what percentage do you generate from initiatives that are businesses in their own rights?
So on the global scale, it's about 12%.
Okay.
And that was a deliberate approach for us a few years back. And we were lucky with that approach in a way, because that when we did our SWOT analysis in our strategic planning right before the pandemic actually, and it was in February and the pandemic hit in March.
Yeah.
We identified some of the risks. Diseases was one of them, so we actually had a contingency plan on what we need to do when there is a disease, and that's why we're quite fortunate that we executed that right away. But part of that was, if everything is relying on the government, that puts the business in a very high risk, because government policies change, there's always adjustments. We're now dealing with the unregistered providers versus registered providers and the ratio and what that looks like. So when I identified this as a risk and I wanted to provide the best for people with disability, I needed to take initiatives that are outside of government funding, because I don't think the government can do everything on their own.
Yeah.
We need to also play a part in that. So we diversified. So our 4 strategic pillars are growth, diversification, people and culture, and quality and safeguards. So together, when they come together, they build the foundation of a successful business. And diversification was key. So we had to go outside of the norm and disrupt the industry a little bit.
Yeah, and that's quite unusual, because all of the businesses that you work in have a very high component of being government funded, and even your employment pathways, you could, as you said, be registered as a DES provider or something to that effect and use government funding to do that, but you've made the deliberate choice to work outside of that so that you're minimizing the risk to your business, but it seems like you're also almost creating your own opportunities, creating your own landscape.
Absolutely. I mean, if I'm in the free world of business, I can, and we're good at doing that, we can deliver unlimited growth. And that's why if you're within the government, that's a limited funding. It's a bucket that you know exactly it's capped. I mean, India is now sitting at $42 billion. That's it. as when we go into the open world of business, we can generate revenues, and that revenue is directed to employ people with disability. So it services the same purpose, it achieves the same goal, but without limitation. So why wouldn't I do that?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I don't think there's a lot of providers who see it that way, though. They see government funding as an easy way to generate money. That, you know, it's almost guaranteed that if you do these outcomes, you get paid this amount. Government's backing it. It seems secure, so they just wrap their whole business models around it. And if you talk about diversification, a lot of providers would go, okay, well, I'm diversifying the risk by going from NDIS to aged care. So it's 2 government schemes, or maybe DES, which is a 3rd government scheme, or RTOs, which is another government scheme, and still operating within government schemes as opposed to really looking at the opportunities for your purpose in corporate or commercial spaces, perhaps.
Look, I think I would like to think that everyone has the right intention behind those designs. And if it works for them, it's great. It's just not the way, you know, I like to see my legacy built. I'm very focused on disruption, on being different, on creating a point of difference.
Yeah.
This is something very important to me. I did a lot of education in that space to make sure that I'm well equipped with knowledge that can deliver these outcomes.
Yeah.
We apply a blue ocean strategy, which is an educated approach of basically being different, providing different, looking different, feeling different. And that's what this is all about. Now, people might take the steps into, you know, comfort zone. I mean, the government is your best customer when everything is great.
Yeah.
And some people take that and provide good service. I've seen beautiful providers out there that are providing great work under the guidelines of the funding models. I don't particularly see anything wrong with that. But if you want to be a disruptive manager, if you want to be a creative manager, if you want to create a business that goes beyond the self, you need to do a lot more than that. And that's, and I think it comes from clarity. If everyone's clear about what they want to achieve, some people are just comfortable with that, earning reasonable amount of money, helping reasonable amount of people, and they know exactly what they need to do, and it's, because it's a lot easier when you work within the government funding, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And some people might disagree with that, but at least you know what you're dealing with.
That's right.
And if you know what you're dealing with, you can easily plan around it.
Yeah.
In the world that we operate in, there's a lot of unknowns that we have to maneuver around. And it takes a lot of effort, a lot of knowledge, a lot of practical work, and sometimes we trial and error and things that doesn't always work, and what's your mitigation strategy to risk, and all these sort of principles around business we have to apply to succeed. And working with the unknown is tricky.
You have a number of other innovative models within your range of businesses, such as your autism schools and the hospitals that you support, and you also do work in both Dubai and Egypt, as well as Australia and probably many other countries. What drives you to make impact for people with disability? Why people with disability? Where does that come from?
So people with disability is the largest minority in the world. And sometimes we don't see it that way. So it is a minority, but it's a lot of minority. And if you're not paying attention to it, it does affect the whole greater community. So we need to pay attention to it. In the world, there's 1 billion people with disability. 1 billion people. In Australia alone, there's 5 million people with disability. The NDIS supports 700,000, 800,000.
Yeah.
So we're still a long way to go. And if we're not paying attention to that community, it's a problem. They have a strong voting powers. Politicians need to keep an eye on it and need to support these people a bit better than they are, in my opinion, because they are a strong voting power. They are consumers. They buy everything that people, food, activities, outings. That's why when I look at some activity centers and they have full comfort in the activity center, to a point that the person doesn't actually particularly need to leave, or we say they're getting the experience from within, so we teach them how to do money handling within a center, or watch movies within a center that looks like a full cinema room. Or that's not what it's about. I remember back in the days when we did the Stronger Together with the state government, and we were about normalization and getting people just to learn how to live a normal life. Everything was about how you're gonna get out of isolation.
Yeah.
Because being in a closed group of similar disabilities is isolation, even if you're doing that in a different context of your day-to-day. integration is what we want. We want people with disability to integrate, and globally, because it impacts the global economy, not just Australia.
And one of the arguments for the NDIS when it was established was really around this idea of having people with disability be able to contribute to the economy. That seems to have slipped off the radar a little bit, and we are still paying terrible wages to people with disability, so I'm not sure how much that is contributing to the economy. But do you think that the NDIS has the ability or will reach its potential of being something that drives an economic driver for Australia?
Look, what I think is the NDIS is a brilliant model in a country that is a beautiful country. This is a fact, because I've seen it. We operate in 8 different countries, West and East. The implementation, maybe we have question marks around, and it needs to be improved, but the intention behind it is very clean.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't think, and I was very heavily involved in the early stages of the NDIS. I don't think it was designed to create the mayhem we're in today, or that we're seeing today. Right? It wasn't that intention behind it. But there's a bit of trial and error happened.
Yeah.
And it feels to me that it's not really looking at the other models that had the same process, like family daycares or aged care, that had all these problems.
Yeah.
But then the NDIS is just going through exactly the same journey.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure when the learning will kick in, but there's definitely changes happening.
Yeah.
And it needs to happen. When the NDIS came about, it's an insurance scheme. It was designed that people get funding to achieve goals. That tends to have slipped away. I mean, we're getting all these, who's measuring the achievement of the goals? The plans are being rolled over all over the place. We don't even know the achievement, or there's no reporting on that anymore for the last 2 or 3 years, because it's giving predictability on the funding model rather than achievement. And how many people do you know have gone out of the scheme? So the idea of the NDIS was that you get into the scheme, you build skills, and then you get out of the scheme, and that's the success story. And then people that cannot get out of the scheme get identified and then get supported accordingly. Now, you tell me how many people you know that have gone through the scheme, built skills, that they no longer need the scheme and went independent.
Yeah, none.
I don't know any.
Yeah.
There might be some, but I don't know any. So this is where the problem is, that we're not paying attention to why the scheme started. And if people today, if they achieve, I know people that have achieved a lot of great goals, yet the NDIS is still there for life.
Yeah.
And we need to change that narrative, and that's what I'm trying to do. I can only play a piece of the puzzle, but if we don't all play, the puzzle doesn't complete. So we all need to play our parts.
And you know the disability space around the world very well. How do you think the implementation of the NDIS is going in Australia compared to other schemes?
Look, the United States, for example, is 52 countries in one country, right? It's a very interesting space, because from one state to the other, the whole setup is completely different. So it's a very messy place. And if you want to move from one state to the other, you have to live there for more than 6 months to be eligible to that state's support.
Right.
Because that's when you become identified as a resident.
Right.
So maneuvering around that is very tricky. In Australia, we don't have to do that. It's one place, the federal government, and supported by the state government. I think that can be improved, but it's there. We know where to go. And that in its own is a positive. I do think we're still in a very good place compared to others, but I do still think that there's way more improvement that can happen without spending more money. It's actually, in my opinion, it can reduce the cost on the government if it's managed correctly.
Yeah.
So there's a small little changes that can happen that can improve quality, improve legitimacy of the service delivery, and at the same time saves costs for the government.
Do you think that we will get to that place, or is the monster that is government, the bureaucracy that is government, going to prevent us from realising those efficiencies or those outcomes?
Look, it's $1 million question, Tania. I can't answer that question because I don't know. I hope that the people in power are in it for the right reasons, and I can only hope that people with disability to remember they are the power, and they should make noise when things are not working in their favor, and they should speak up and advocate and put input and join all these discussion groups to say their opinion. They have to have an input on how this is delivered. And they have to remember there are 5 million people in this country, so their votes and the sound and has to be heard, and it's not an option. This is a must.
Yeah. For anyone listening to this and being inspired by the action that you're taking and that you're really trying to make a difference in solving a problem, where would you say someone starts with taking action and trying to come up with an innovation to disrupt the NDIS sector?
Well, I think first thing, start with yourself, learning, finding the right mentor. I strongly believe, I don't like advice. The word advice is not particularly my thing, right? And the reason is, advice can sometimes come from a place of no doing. Right? So I haven't done it before, I just think that's how it should be done. I love mentorship. If I have done it before, I should be able to share that with you, and then you can pick from it what works for you. Because we're not all the same, all right? So my journey might not really work for someone else, and someone else's journey might not work for me. So what we really want to do, to change the narrative completely around, this is what you should be doing. But come and watch my journey, take from it what works for you, and what you really like about it, and find the right mentors. And mentors needs to change regularly. You cannot have one mentor for the rest of your life. You know, and if people in that space should pay attention to that, because that's how you grow, that's how you learn, that's how you do things differently all the time, and create challenging piece for you. Because I always say, I've noticed that a lot of founders in businesses in general become the CEOs just because they're the founders. And in my opinion, this is completely wrong. You should be the CEO of that organization because you're the most qualified for it, regardless if you're the founder or not. And what are you doing to become that? If you're not doing anything about it, you're not going to be the best leader. You're going to have a problem in your business eventually, even if it's succeeding at some point. So first thing is, make sure that people are doing the job when they are the best people for the job. That's how you get outcomes. Find the right mentor in your business and continuously grow yourself. Every 7 years, it's a cycle of a CEO. So unless you are different from the 7 years before, then you need to question whether you're relevant. This is my opinion. Whether you're still relevant to that position or not. And what have you done? Personally, I just came last year from Stanford. I got mentored by Richard Branson. I went to him. I'm going again in May. I'm going to study in Harvard. I don't stop doing that, because the second I stop doing that, I will question myself if I'm still relevant to my business. Yeah.
You mentioned one of your mentors being Richard Branson. Who else are mentors that you've worked with?
So he's, I spent 3 days with Richard in his home, and I learned a lot from him. I read his book. I watched the guy quite a lot. He's an amazing guy. But then I have a lot of other people that in my life in business. There's a lot. I pick and choose all the time, I have to say. I don't have one particular person. If I want to grow internationally, then I'd have a mentor that have done that before, and I learn from them. If there's some struggles in finances, for example, I'll get someone that has been through challenges and learn what they've done from them. And I apply what works for me. Not everything will work for me. I apply for it. You and I spoke about the Scaling Up program. So Vern Harnish is one of the people that I look up to. I tagged him the other day when we had a chat, because he's a brilliant guy. He's a disruptive thinker, right? So you might not agree particularly with a lot of his methodology, because it's very disruptive, but it doesn't matter. Apply what works for you. But doing something about it is what makes a difference.
And I remember the story of how you approached Vern to mentor you, and you're very tenacious in not taking no for an answer, even though he wasn't taking on mentees as such. How, when you get a mentor, do you approach them? Is it a paid arrangement? Is it someone, because you've mentioned watching more successful people, but that could almost be just having role models, as opposed to actually entering into an agreement where they will give you mentorship, I was going to say advice, mentorship, and actually work with you to help you come up with strategies or solve problems?
Paid or unpaid, I don't think that's the question. It doesn't really matter if it's paid or unpaid. What matters is who's driving the conversation. Right. So finding a mentor that gets paid, there's nothing wrong with that. Is it business coach or mentor? I like mentor. Business coach sometimes have not done the journey, right? So they haven't done actually business that runs at, say, multi-million-dollar business, and then they're coaching someone to become a multi-million-dollar business, right? While a mentor has done that before.
Yeah.
That's what I love about Vern. Vern has been through that. He's established a very successful business. He, mentored a lot of people in the successful world. His methodology has proven to work. So this is the kind of thing. So paid or unpaid, I don't think that's what the relevant point.
Yeah.
The relevant point is who's driving that conversation. It should be the mentee.
Right.
Where a lot of situations I see that the mentor driving the conversation. And I find this is wrong. You need to know very clearly what you want to learn. What do you want out of your mentor? And then you go there and you hunt it. You say, this is what I want you to teach me. I don't want anything else. Be very clear about what you want. So the mentor can actually contribute to what you want to learn. So just it's a note for all the mentees, you drive the conversation, not the mentor.
You drive the outcomes. What are the biggest challenges you have as an NDIS provider?
Challenges?
Yeah.
Do you have a big list? Now, look, it's the whole NDIS concept is one thing, and the implementation is another. We can talk about the significant admin work that is required, while the NDIS pricing model only allows 12% of overhead. That's a problem. And how are we going to maneuver around that? Because when you run at 12% overhead cost, while a good business would run at least 20-25%, you already have a gap. And if we look at all the financial reports that come from the NDIS and from the parties that analyzed the organizations operating in the NDIS world, the 68% of providers running at a loss, about 2% under. Very little organizations are in profit, which is about 2% over. Then you got a few that are in the higher end of the margins or the profitability or the surplus that have been creative in the way they're managing. But the majority are not. And that's a major problem, And when you look at structures of the people that are in high margins, which I have seen a few, they are the very low on overhead, which to me poses a problem, because how do you run a good operation with that there are people in the right jobs? So that's a question mark in my opinion. The second thing is you get creative. So do you go offshore? Do you get some of your services offshore? How do you do that? That's not an easy setup for anyone. And how do you grow your revenue to reduce your overhead rather than not having overhead? And those principles of business gets tricky amongst all the requirements of the NDIS.
And how have you embraced these challenges as further areas to innovate and get better at what you do? Is it offshoring? Is that? So
that's one of them. So we're an international business, right? So it's a lot easier for us to start. We just know how to operate in different countries. And we follow principles. We don't just go randomly. We have a 100-day principle that we call it, and we learned that from a model that an entity called Danaher that have done in the United States, which is the largest healthcare provider in the world. A lot of people don't know the name, but it's actually bigger than GE and the others. So, and the reason is they do it so well. 100-day model is basically we look at a market, we do market segmentation, analyze how can we service that market, what's the pros and cons, how can we apply our strategies in what works and what doesn't in 100 days. If the team cannot prove to me in 100 days that this will be a successful model, we don't go ahead. So 100 days, that's it.
It's amazing.
So it's being really strict with your rules and then being creative. So yes, we did offshore on some of the services, absolutely. But that was not the first step we've done. We go to the core, identify all our challenges, what are we good at, what are we not good at, what can we improve, and how can we solve these problems. That's when we start solving. And if we go offshore, then be it.
It's very strategic.
Very strategic.
Where do you see your organization in the future?
So I'm trying to build the organization to go beyond me as a person now. So a lot of restructuring. There's a principle in business which Van talks about a lot. What brought you here is not going to take you there. Right? So all the things that worked for you to come to this point might not be exactly the same things you need to come to the next stage. So you have to constantly go back and restructure what you're doing.
Mm.
Now I have one big principle in everything I'm doing. TLC needs to go beyond Yasser. TLC is not about Yasser. So I have to restructure and restructure and restructure until I come to a point that it's systematic growth. Because you have to trust in the process. So the better you build the process, the better this can continue beyond the person with the same quality outcome expected. So this is what I'm working on now. And I'm trying to shape that future for TLC to just take a step further from Yasser.
Yeah. And I know that you're working on a book. So tell me about your book.
So historically, when I first joined this line of work, it was very heavy on the non-for-profit world. And when we had the transition to the NDIS, there was a lot of conversations around if it's for-profit entity, they're just about the money.
Yeah.
That is not true. And I've seen so many organizations that are for-profit and they're not just about the money. They want to help people. And I know that TLC is because we've got a lot happen in that space. So if we think about successful business, linked to the help you can give to people, you'll find that the more the business is successful, the more the business has impact investment into it, the more people are getting support, the better services, the better quality, the better resources, because it's running as a successful business.
Yeah.
That's the essence of the book, is how can you run a successful business while doing good? And running successful business does not mean you're not doing good things. It actually means that you can do more of good things. There's two principles that the book is written based on. One is one hand can clap. And I always talk about this. This is a narrative that I use quite a lot now, because not one person can do it on their own. We all need to contribute to that journey. The second one is a ship without goodness sinks. And that's my dad actually told me that when I moved from my career from the corporate world into the caring community world, I lost a lot of income. And it shook me a little bit because it changed my whole lifestyle. And I called my dad, who was a judge, and I said, this is what's happening, what do I do? I really want to help people and I'm really enjoying that, but I'm struggling financially significantly. And he said, a ship without goodness sinks. Don't stop doing good. So I continued my career based on that word. So I built the whole TLC concept based on that. So we do a lot of goodness. We, outside of business, we build schools for people that, for countries that cannot afford doing that. We contribute to water wells in places that can't drink water. So we do a lot of humanitarian activities behind the scenes. I don't want to particularly talk about them all, but we do a lot of that because of that concept. So the book is just combining all of this together and showing businesses that you can be successful while you're doing all these great things.
Amazing. I can't wait to read it. I'm very excited.
Soon. You get a signed copy.
Yeah, I'm expecting one. If other providers want to reach out to you and talk about TLC and your model and the amazing work you're doing, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Just email me or, just email me.
Find you on the socials.
Yeah, I communicate a lot. I mean, I've got a team sometimes that jump on, but trust me, I'm very hands-on. Yesterday I had a provider that emailed me from the function that I don't know really that well, and they said, would like to meet with you. And they came and we had coffee and we had a chat and look at collaboration opportunities. And the question that the lady asked me was, we're a very small provider. Would a big provider like you collaborate with us? And I said, you're asking the wrong question. What value do you have to add to people with disability that we can contribute to, both of us together? And that's the real question. Big, small, it's not the question. Collaboration is the future. If we don't collaborate, we go weak and people with disability miss out. If I'm not the best provider, I should be able to have a provider that I know they are good at what they're doing, and I'll be happy to tell the participant about them. These principles, if it's done well, it actually no one misses out on anything from a business perspective, but the participant gets the best. So collaborating is I'm always open to it.
I'm always so surprised at how generous you are with your time as well. You seem to give your time and your attention just so freely for, for your cause, I suppose, that your mission.
Absolutely. I work 18-hour days.
Yeah,
Exciting.
I'm not surprised.
I don't get tired. I love it. Look, it's my time is only a very small token into a much greater ecosystem that we're trying to build. So if I can add value, I will always do that. And that's what I always tell people. If you want to come and talk to me, I would love that. But just make sure that I'm adding value to you and you're adding value to me. Because we need to direct our time to our cause and our purpose, which is enhancing people's lives.
Yeah.
So I'm always welcoming anyone to chat, any positive chat that can contribute to that, anyone that has a great idea. And I've had a gentleman that come to me from Melbourne, actually specifically came and met with me about an idea that he's passionate about, doesn't have the resources to do it, which we were working very similar space, and I accepted to take him on the journey because he was that passionate. I'm not mentioning names because I don't know if they want us to mention names, but it was exactly the same concept. He just said, I would like to sit down and talk to you about an idea that I have. I said, please come in, and we had a chat, and now hopefully we'll take it further. So I'm all for that. If it's going to help people, I'm in.
You're in.
I'm in.
Thank you so much for your time today. It's always a pleasure speaking with you, and I really can't wait to read the book and to see what's next for TLC.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us on another enlightening episode of Innovate for Impact. Stay tuned for more thought-provoking conversations and innovative ideas that drive positive change within the NDIS space. Remember, together we're shaping a future where innovation and impact go hand in hand.